Hello, everyone, and welcome to Refresh, right? This is the time to connect, be inspired, learn something, and ultimately feel grateful for this time spent together. What can be better than connection? A little break in the day, reminding of us our humanity. I tell you, the leaves are turning and the temps are dropping, and kind of there's a freshness in the air. I hope you feel it wherever you are. And for me, it's just invigorating. We're preparing for Generation Wow, our teen girls leadership and mentorship energizing experience on Friday. As you can tell, I'm amping my energy up to get ready for these wonderful 400 teen girls. Chloe and Zanaya and Brittany and all of our team who are leading the way. And I can tell you that about half of our team, um, the sense of purpose that drives us to do what we do is absolutely heightened at these times. I mean, we feel it every day, but right now, right? Purpose is driving our mission to serve. And it's been said that, I love this saying, by the way, I don't know if you've heard it yet, but where purpose meets service, impact begins. And it's funny, I didn't know that. I should have, because impact, just a note, we will be celebrating 15 years of Generation W impact on March 27th, 2026. It's when Generation W will be back on the stage. And Aries, I remember you were with us at the University of North Florida. It is a celebration. Please mark your calendars, purchase your tickets, join us. We want it to be as festive as possible at a time when festivity and celebration and connectivity could not be more important. You know, our work has always been in the service to others. And the ability to serve, to make that personal decision, to live a life of service is an interesting one. As a younger woman, I would reflect on, I don't know why, but I actually remember being at the Air Force Academy. Like I was 18 years old on a tourist trip. And I said, who are these people like standing on these corners, like standing straight in uniforms? Like, who would make that decision to do that? You know, it was an all-encompassing mission of service. And at that point in my life, I don't know that I could understand it quite the way I fully embrace it now. Because that sense of incredible sacrifice, personal sacrifice, impacting every aspect of someone's life, even their very life itself. You know, you ask, who would do that? That has to be extraordinary people. And in this case, it's extraordinary women. Because we come together for Refresh after a national election where I've always been reminded growing up that the importance of voting, people have fought and died for that privilege. We need to honor that. And then on Monday, it's Veterans Day, which is a day we reflect and pay respects to those who have earned through their service our ability to live the lives that we have, even if they do no longer have theirs. So today, we have two incredibly amazing women who have chosen lives of service, rooted in purpose to love and defend our country. And their stories are filled with tremendous learning that will carry us forward, which is why we do Refresh. So let me introduce you to first, some of you may have met her before. As I said, she's been on our Generation W stage. Colonel retired Eries Mentzer. She's a proud U.S. Air Force veteran with nearly 30 years of service. I want to say, if service looks that good on you, baby, I'm doing it too. She's the first woman of color to command Maxwell Air Force Base. She's a trailblazing leader known for driving innovation, and currently a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force Reserves. She had senior roles. Oh, no, no. You've built inclusive teams and preparing the next generation of warriors through Air Commando Development Center. And you're going to tell us what the Air Commando thing, because it sounds pretty cool. And we're always happy to have Aries back with us. I think we've adopted her, and I think she might have adopted us back.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And joining her today is another remarkable woman of accomplishment and service, Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Oh my goodness, Tahina Montoya. She's a multilingual international affairs strategist and Air Force veteran with over 17 years of service across tactical, operational, and strategic levels. Oh my goodness. A two-time combat deployer, and we're going to understand what a two-time combat deployer actually means. And she's the current lieutenant colonel in the Air Force Reserves. She's held senior roles at the Department of Veterans Affairs and the White House. She now serves as a defense and policy researcher and adjunct professor at GW University. And I just want to say, ladies, thank you so much I think if we can hear our applause from all of our guests, they would all be standing up and cheering for you. Because honestly, what you do for us, I don't know that we can say thank you enough. Okay, so shall we? And ladies and
Yes.
gentlemen who are with us, and hello to you all. Please remember you can participate. That's what's so beautiful about Refresh. It's why everyone's saying, "Oh, go do a podcast." I just want everyone to have the opportunity to have to ask questions, right? To be engaged. So let's start with like maybe the most basic of questions. When and why did you choose this particular direction, a life of service that you have? And you know what? Tahina's the rookie. Should we kick it off with hers? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Rookie, let's go.
No pressure, no pressure. So I actually had never heard of the military before, and in going into high school, I had one of the options alongside gym was junior ROTC, and I kept asking, trying to understand what junior ROTC was, and instead of folks answering my question, it was confronted with, "You're too girly, you can't handle it, you're Latina, you're too feminine." And so, without knowing what junior ROTC was, I checked the box out of defiance, which this defiance bid has played quite a role in my life continuously throughout the years. And I signed up for it, and it changed my life. I was able to get a 4-year Air Force scholarship, still serving in the reserves right now. And I am the only one in my family to serve, and the oldest daughter of a Colombian family to serve, which, for those of you out there listening, if you do come from a Hispanic background, that it puts a lot of pressure, to leave your family. But I what drew me so much to the program, in addition to it was a life changer, my parents had offered me and continue to offer me unwavering support, but they were very clear with me from the beginning that they didn't have a way to financially support me through college, and so it was on me to do that. But they also grounded me in giving back to the community somehow. And so when I learned that junior ROTC had a big service component, and that I learned about the concept of serving your country. It all fits so well into how my parents raised me, and it ended up changing my life. I think that's the best way I could summarize it. But the initial introduction to the military was an act of defiance.
I know I was going to, and I wrote that down and active defiance because I want to come back to that theme later. So it's going in quotes and in red, active defiance. How
And
about you? I mean, you have a bit of a longer career at this point in time, but when and why? And look at all those fabulous photographs behind you.
Thanks, Donna. And I would say defiance is me as well. And I started as a Navy brat. My dad was an aviator in the Navy. We moved from coast to coast. It seemed like every 2 years. And I was literally exhausted and frustrated with having to restart my life and follow my dad's career. And it was when my dad was stationed at Maxwell Air Force Base when I was a kid that I looked to my dad and I said to him, I will never marry into the military because I don't want to live like this. And it was key because I said marry into the military because in all the times we were in my dad's flying unit or going on the ship visits, I never saw a woman. And so I never thought it was possible for someone like me. And then when it came time for college, currently my dad was one of the best recruiters, and was really encouraging me to go towards a path of military service, which I was pushing back on pretty hard, saying not for me. But I did apply and got a ROTC scholarship to the University of Nebraska, and really just saw the Air Force at that point of more of a toll booth. Somewhere where I would pay my dues to get to where I really wanted to go, and just do my 4 years, get my education paid for, and move on. But when I came into service that I met extraordinary people. We were in a crisis moment in a unit in Spangdahlem, Germany, and I kind of call it my blueing moment, where I saw how people come together in tough times, how we prepare and ready people to, at that time, it was post 9/11, and we were getting ready to launch people into that conflict, and what it truly meant to serve and do something that is bigger than yourself towards the greater good, and recognize that democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of our talents, whether it's in uniform or out of uniform. it requires all of us to show up and serve if democracy is going to win. And so over the course of my career, I've got to, one, for the single ladies out there, found a great man who can cook and fix stuff while serving. But, and you got to meet, him, Donna. But, I have traveled the world. I have, had the chance to get multiple levels of education for free, have great healthcare benefits. My son will go to college on my GI Bill, and I have grown exponentially from the people I've met and the opportunities that I've had. So it's been phenomenal.
Amazing. Could we go back to, oh my goodness, maybe I just say my mother, who really did not want to miss this. This is personal. Um, she's on. Hi, Mom. Thank you.
Hi,
I'm glad it all worked out. Okay, good. Because honestly, she was panicking. Let's talk a little bit. That's a really great sentiment. But I want to dig into really what it means for all of us. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Okay, peel back that onion for us a little bit. What do you think, Tahina?
I would say that at face value, that can seem very intimidating. You feel like you have to do these grand gestures to actually promote democracy and show its worth. I am the firm believer that the promotion of democracy can take a lot of forms, and it doesn't have to be grand gestures. It could be in the simplest things, and often it's the more simpler or the smaller the efforts are almost, well, definitely equally as valuable, but sometimes more valuable than the grand gestures. And especially during a time like this, I have internalized and really thought through what that means and what steps I can take. And oftentimes I was very frustrated with myself and my inability, or what I perceived as my inability to do like this grand gesture, like running for a campaign or something like that. And what I realized is um, it doesn't have to be a big gesture. And so what does that
Yes.
look like for me?
Yeah. What does that look like for you? That was my question. What does that look
sorry. Mentoring, at Georgetown, being a practitioner in residence where I mentor first generation college students who don't have, whose families support them, but who have accomplished something so big as to getting accepted to Georgetown, but just don't have the mentorship to guide them through it. So mentoring the future leaders of this country, that is definitely valuable. Is it a grand gesture? No,
Yes.
but is it
Yes.
important? Yes. And so I would say that although it seems like it has to be grand at face value, that there's a lot of worth in small gestures.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you think that's small. I think I'm going to say to our team, we're in the process of recruiting 100 women mentors right now for some of our WOW girls. It's a small gesture, and
Yes.
it has a huge impact, right? Huge impact. So that's great. How about for you, Aries? What is preserving democracy, or democracy not being is not a spectator sport? What does that mean?
Well, I
What do
think
we need to do?
I think all three of us are a perfect example of that. When we each began, launched out of high school and began our different paths, there were a lot of pathways that were not open for us. Right. And over time, as I like, hello to your mom. My mom is one of my greatest heroes. And, as I watched her life and know her life story, she was always so much more than the opportunities that were made available for her. And she had to fight for every inch. And that was made me kind of the resilient, defiant, strong woman that I am today. And today I serve on the board for the President Truman Library Institute, and he's the president that signed the Women's Armed Service Integration Act that allowed both of us to serve, and so many others that have followed us. He is the president that signed Executive Order 9981 that desegregated the military and allowed people like us to serve. These pathways, like I told you, my dad flew with all men. There were no women when I watched my dad and his different units. And now I see women serving at all levels. I see, so many great, I've been in so many rooms where there is so much, such diversity of perspective that we really find creative ways to get after these wicked problems. And so in saying all that, we need people to move us from where we've been to our American ideal. Our democracy is not perfect, but it is worth perfecting. And I think whether that is in the community level, whether that is in the state level or the federal level, all of us can show up and share our talent. But the bottom line is we have pacing adversaries, particularly in the Pacific, that are challenging global world order, whether that's in CE space, cyberspace, and we can't solve these problems, if we don't let the brightest minds around the table. And so, as generations have fought for us to be here in this moment to, lead the WNBA, to lead the PGA, to be women serving veterans from the White House, right? Like, if I look to my mom's generation, those things were not imaginable, but people pushed to allow us to have these positions, and we're just not going to, hold the position. We're going to keep pushing that doorway open so that the future generations can be able to share their talents so that our democracy can win.
Okay. I mean, is that a drop the mic moment or what? Because
Yes.
it's so interesting. I just spent 2 days with leaders of our city talking about how to continue to elevate our city. And and everyone was like, don't get mired down in the bad stuff. Keep your eyes on the good stuff. And like that's what you said. We are not perfect, but we
Mhm.
are worth perfecting. So we move forward. You also mentioned the White House, which I couldn't help but feel was maybe a little bit of a little bell ringer for me to go back to Tahina, right? And ask her, what was it like? What did you do serving in the White House?
So I was, first of all, it was unfathomable. If someone would have asked me if I would, like, I wouldn't even know the pathways. I didn't know that the White House has internship opportunities, which I know sounds ridiculous for me not to know that. But I was actually asking all the interns there, like, how did you hear about this? What website did you go to? Those were opportunities that were just not presented to me in any way, shape, or form. And to kind of touch on just how beyond my imagination this was when my family got word that when I told my parents and my parents called our family back in Colombia, their first reaction was, oh, but like she's cleaning the White House. And my mom was like, no, 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 no.
Mm.
She is working there. And I think it speaks to, and they never meant it like maliciously, but it's just that it is so beyond the scope of our family's imagination that this could happen. So to answer your question, I was the senior advisor of the Office of Engagement, the White House Office of Engagement, where I ran the veteran and military portfolios. So essentially, every single president can dictate kind of what their priorities are. I think it speaks volumes that President Biden and Vice President Harris, their priorities spanned a lot of portfolios. So they had a larger team. They had about 20 people, and they designated every person a very specific portfolio because they wanted to make sure that those constituents felt seen, felt heard, and our roles were to serve as bridges. So not only finding ways to make sure the constituents would be able to come to the White House and see themselves in the people's house, as we called it, but that also that we did our part in sharing President Biden and Vice President Harris's mission like out. And so traveling across the country to be able to meet constituents where they are, speak to them, understand their perspectives, and then bring it back to the White House. It was an incredible honor, total pinch me moment. It was definitely like a roller coaster ride. And now that I'm off the ride, I'm like, wait, did that just really happen? And so I just really humbled and still can't believe it actually happened.
Wow, wow, that's great. So I heard a couple of things in there as I listen. One, how valuable and important you are. I'm thinking, I think Brittany and Chloe might be on, is how great it would be to have you come talk to our young women. We got a data point the other day on some of our high schools. One, there's a great degree of military. We live in a military town in Jacksonville, Florida. Many other towns may
Mhm.
not be like this as well, cities. Um, but there are a lot of kids who don't know what they want to do. I mean, if I was in school, I don't know that I would have picked the military, but yet I can see that being an incredible option that I probably now that I couldn't see then. Do you know what I
Oh
mean?
yes, it
And I
it's
think
it
see the
changes.
and hearing from you, both of you, could be really valuable because what you talked about, Tina, was really important. Aries had exposure to the Navy through her dad, right? You had no exposure to any of this. And that's what we try to do with Generation Wow, is right to provide exposure, even through Generation W, being able to hear what you're saying, other points of views, how you've lived our lives differently, yet share common values. It's just incredible, incredible. All right, so let me ask you this, Aries. You have been a barrier buster since you began. Really, really, since you began. What things stand out for you now that you would like to share with us, that helped one teach you about the good, the bad, and the ugly of life?
Well, that's a great question. This week I'm doing interviews for a congresswoman to select appointments for our military academies. One of the number one things that we're looking for in these candidates is grit. So these are high school seniors that are applying to go to West Point, to go to the Air Force Academy, to go to the United States Naval Academy. The number one thing we're looking for in these folks is grit. And I would say that as you are coming up, a lot of these kids have had, and I want every parent listening and every child listening to say that for every level of success, there's an equal or greater level of adversity that you've had to navigate to get to that achievement. And so what we don't look for necessarily is the person that's had, the 4.9, the 36 ACT and captain and this, like all of that is important and things that you need to get ahead. But what you also need to do is, for one of the kids, got an F in English their freshman year, right? And it's not about the F, it's how did you respond? And so, for everybody listening, when you come across those challenging moments, and certainly Tahina and I could tell you hours of those throughout our career, moments where we had to fight for our voices to be heard, moments where we had to prove our value and our worth to people of equal, greater, or sometimes even junior rank to us. And with each of those things, we relied on our competence, our confidence, our character. I always told people that I lead book chapter verse, right? Do you fully understand the situation where you're in? Have you done the hard research so you can speak, credibly about whatever challenges in front of you? And then have you worked with other people, collaborated to understand a great way to get forward? So we will all face difficulty and challenges in our lives. We have a difficult economy. We have a lot of factors going on, right, that can influence how we show up every day. But are we teaming with others, right, to be able to understand all the resources out there? Do we have confidence in ourselves? Do we lean into our character, and so that we can find our strength there? Do we have the courage to keep going forward? And know that people broke barriers for you to be in this moment, right? Don't just be satisfied, right? You've got to keep pushing forward and keep breaking down those things that are standing between us, right, and the American dream, so that the next generation can focus on even more wicked challenges that are coming our way.
Wow. You're just so inspirational. Both of you are. I said when I introduced you, however, that you, what do we call, I guess people, do they call you Lieutenant Colonel, or do they call you Doctor, or they just call
Oh,
you Tahina?
mostly mom or
Oh, I love that. But I can't call you Mom. I can call you Tahina though, right? Um,
It's also very humbling. Once I did get my doctorate, which by the way, I did not think was actually going to happen, my oldest was like, but you're not that kind of doctor. And I'm like, that's very true. That is very, very true. The doctor that helps with body physical ailments. And so it's a very humbling experience. But Tahina, mom, hey you, that's fine.
but what did you get your PhD in ultimately?
Oh, so it was a doctorate in liberal studies, which, by the way, it was a doctorate in liberal studies. Happy to talk a little bit more about my dissertation, but I used my post 9/11 GI Bill. And so, like Aries mentioned, the Air Force not only paid for my bachelor's degree, but my two masters, including one in weapons of mass destruction. Don't ask me why I pursued that one. And then my doctorate from
Okay, we won't.
Georgetown, my doctorate from Georgetown. And and it's a generational changer. There's no way my parents could afford me to put me through all that
Mhm.
schooling, and I didn't pay a dime. I mean, I
Right.
paid through service, of course, but like, um, and so I did go a little bit left field, not so much on the national security space, but in Panama, there's seven indigenous groups, and there was one which has been the they're called the Kuna Yala. Their independence, they just celebrated their 100 years of independence, and they are a what we would call a matrilineal society. And so their women do have a voice, and I wanted to explore and better understand that. And so I did my research on that, understanding their material art, which is called the molas, and trying to get a better understanding of how they feel their identity is translated through their art. There is a national security thread, which I could bore you all about, but I definitely, it was life changing. I brought my kids with me to do the field work, which is a very remote community. And I still, just last year I was with them, and we're making plans to travel again to Cunayala this year. And so it was really incredible to be able to leverage one of the many benefits of serving our country, and exploring something that I'm passionate about is just a little bit different than, national security related matters.
Well, that's incredible. I'm going to come. I have one more follow up to that. But I just want to say, for those of you who've joined us a little bit late, welcome to Refresh. Amazing day. We have incredible women who are teaching us about service and purpose and how they're connected, supporting our country, loving our country, in between Election Day and Veterans Day. So we say hi to Colonel Retired Eries Mentzer and Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Doctor, not that kind of doctor, but Dr. Tahina Montoya. Tahina, we mentioned in the beginning, it said that you have a dual deployment.
Oh, yes.
Oh, you are a two-time combat deployer.
So I did want to clarify, not combat, but I'll explain. So in support of OIF and OEF, what that means is that it would not be right for me to present myself as a combat veteran, because that would mean someone that was in the front lines and actually saw fire. I deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom to Qatar and Kyrgyzstan. So Kyrgyzstan the base there was called Transit Center of Manas, which is the first stop that troops leaving Afghanistan would land. And so really, the first time they would touch ground outside of Afghanistan, and then the last stop before they would go into combat. And so it was very, very intense environment, but it definitely, I do not want to present myself as a combat veteran, because out of respect for those who have seen combat. But yeah.
Right. Wow. Wow. I invite questions, comments, please jump right in on the chat. For every program, we ask our guests to provide three, I don't know if we call it, I guess sure we need a name for that, words of wisdom, or, it's kind of their guiding talismans. And so, Eris, your takeaways are serve, lead, and honor. So why don't you take us through your thoughts on these?
Sure, absolutely. As I said in the beginning, I believe that democracy is not a spectator sport, and that America is worth fighting for. While everybody may not be suitable or want to serve in the armed forces, there are so many ways with which you can serve, locally, nationally, globally. Right now, a mutual friend that Tahina and I have by the name of Jimmy Anderson, him and I are doing a discussion. It's called Red Tape Real Talk, where we introduce you to public servants, everywhere from tax advisors to the U.S. Mint to the Postal Service, all of those 15 to 20 services you work on every single day. And so people serve in so many ways, whether it is in some of the nonprofits, we've got incredible ones here around the Jacksonville area that fill the gaps between what our public services can provide and what Americans need. I highly encourage you to, find a way to serve others, to figure out how to advance our communities. And, like Tahina has said earlier, it's the little things, right? How can you make a difference where you are? So I encourage everyone to find a path of service anywhere. And then lead, General Wainwright wrote a letter to all discharging service members after World War II. And what the letter said was that we've put incredible investments in each and every one of you as we did the buildup, and then won in that conflict. And then we had a mass discharge of all of these service members after World War II. Now what? And he said, you are natural born, I wouldn't say natural born. I said, you are developed leaders, right? That have gotten incredible skills and learned how to resolve conflict, how to bring people together, how to move a mission forward. Take that back to your communities. And so wherever you are, whether you are playing in the new women's league, whether you are, in a business, wherever you are, find a way to figure out what your strengths and capabilities are and share those towards the greater good. You don't have to be a CEO of a company or captain of a professional team to be a leader. You just have to be willing to share the talents you have to get from complex problem to community and progress forward. And then honor. Today, if you go over to my LinkedIn or you hit the Red Tape Real Talk link that I have on there, you will see an interview we launched of a man named Major James Capers. He was a Special Forces Marine during Vietnam, the first Black man to receive a battlefield commission, multiple Purple Hearts, Silver Star. And he is, if you remember that poster of a gorgeous Black man in a Marine uniform, that was a recruiting poster that said, "Ask a Marine." He was the poster boy for the Marine Corps for decades to get people to want to join. And right now, 47 bipartisan Congress men and women have signed a letter to upgrade his Silver Star to the Medal of Honor, which he should have received already. He is 88 years old. And if you know about the things that he did, you will know that he is worthy of recognition by our nation, but that recognition should come while he's still with us.
Yes,
So we need to,
yes.
it is our role to make sure we honor those that have got us to this moment. And on this Veterans Day, take the opportunity to go out and make sure that you are serving somebody, you're leading something up that is something bigger than yourself, and you're honoring those that have come before us.
Wow, that's amazing. So I just, my mom, isn't this great? She's with us. Invite your guests. This is my mom telling me what to do. Invite your guests to speak at Gen W. More women can be influenced by these fabulous women. By the way, I think
Thanks,
so.
Mom.
I'm going to say thanks, Mom Sherry.
Yes, of course, right? I think it's absolutely true. And I have more follow up on that, but before I do, I want to go to Tahina's your takeaways, which you encapsulated under the title of the power of possibility, which actually is part of the ethos of our Gen Wow program, the power, the positive and the possible. So
Yeah. So I guess what I try to impart, and feel free to take whatever may resonate with you, but something, I guess, things that have helped me navigate the adventures of life is the world is going to close doors on you. So don't take steps to close doors on yourself. If you want to apply to a particular program, or a job, or you want to explore maybe something you never explored before, put yourself out there, give yourself the chance. And if the universe closes the door on you, then it does, and you move on. And believe me, after the 100th closed door, it doesn't even hurt that much. But don't close yourself from opportunities. Let the universe do that. Throughout life, and I almost said Colonel Metzner, but Aries and I have several examples, as she mentioned, where if we let others dictate what decisions we made, or really influence a particular path we took, we would be in a completely different place. And so what I say that is, stay focused on what your goals are, irrespective of what the challenges are. Barriers can be surmountable, although at times I understand that they don't feel that they are. And tune out the noise, stay focused on what your goals and what drives you and where you want to be. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I know that sounds very silly, and at times it forces us to be extremely creative on how we get to our goals, but that doesn't make them impossible. And so really finding ways to tune out the noise. Okay, definitely give yourself the space to mourn or ask why, but instead of hyper focusing on the why, shift it to the how. Like, okay, this happened, this couldn't happen for X, Y, or Z reason. How can I overcome this? What steps can I take differently and think creatively, thinking outside the box, in order to move forward with whatever your goals and dreams are. And again, not hopefully something resonates. Those are a few things that
Oh my
I
God,
always
it
come
all
back
it
to
all
when.
it all resonates. And when I close off, actually, you just both of you inspired me. I like you opened this pathway up. Everyone's been asking me like, okay, will you write another book? Write another book. I just figured out what it was talking to you, and I'll reveal that later because I want to share with everybody in the spirit of possibility, right? In the spirit of doing things that in acts of defiance here. I know you both worked together honoring the World War II women of the 6888. They recently received a Congressional Gold Medal. I think, Eris, you told me about this a while ago. I watched the movie. It was incredible. And I thought it would be nice to share that, a little piece of it. Maybe everyone will go home when they have time. I forgot, did I watch it on Netflix? I think I did.
Yeah.
They could watch it too. And we could talk a little bit about celebrating accomplishment against all odds for the betterment of our world and our country, right? So, Sherry, did you want to run that real quick?
The only all-female unit to serve overseas during World War II. And tonight here, the families watching as their loved ones were finally honored. America strong. Tonight, the quiet American heroes from World War II and the new honor long overdue. They were known as the 6888 Central Postal Battalion, the first and only all-black, all-female battalion deployed overseas. More than 850 volunteers sent to Europe in 1945 to sort through millions of undelivered pieces of mail, soldiers anxiously waiting for letters from home. The battalion working 3 separate 8-hour shifts 7 days a week, processing 65,000 pieces of mail every shift, clearing a 2-year backlog. Their motto, no mail, low morale, guiding them. And tonight, 80 years later, the battalion honored with the Congressional Gold Medal. The 2 surviving members of the unit, Anna Mae Robertson and retired Air Force Major Fannie McClendon, watching with their families at home. More than 300 descendants of the 6888 there today at the U.S. Capitol, including Stanley Early III and his sister Judith Early. Their mother, Major Charity Adams, commanding the battalion, and here she is, welcoming the first servicewomen arriving overseas. Tonight, her proud son and his message.
They serve as an inspiring role model for young soldiers entering service today, and they're true examples of American excellence.
Oh my goodness. Are you crying? Because I'm crying. And I watched the movie. It reminds me of how important it is for us to embrace and elevate all talent, no matter who they are, where they are. If people want to serve, we should put our arms around and say, thank you, we love you, let's do that. And yet there continue to be barriers, and we got to continue to stand up, right? And fight for what's right, because there is right. And you guys are doing that. You have done it. You continue to do it. And I know I want to say thank you. And I'm sure that all of our folks here want to say thank you too.
Donna, can I say one thing real quick? It took 80 years for those women to be recognized. And that recognition would not have happened without another woman, Colonel Edna Cummings, who's a friend of both of ours. She learned about this, and she came up in the Army and never knew this story. So number one, why weren't they recognized? Why wasn't their heroics taught as part of Army leadership? But regardless of that, once she learned about the story, for 10 years, it became her mission to get them recognized. And that clip you saw, she was standing on that stage, with our members of Congress, because she is the force behind that recognition. And so for everybody out there, like I said, we're coming up on Veterans Day, and there have been people that have done extraordinary things for our nations. Learn their stories, tell their stories. And if they did not get the love and appreciation from a grateful nation that they earned, you be the person to make that difference.
Okay, so now we have an additional purpose and service to provide. Thank you so much. I always say, I keep notes, as everybody knows, but if anybody here wants to write down in the chat something that they're taking away, one, acting as an act of defiance, you both said that, but Tahina, you came right out of the box saying, you know what, my life has been a result of an act of defiance. I think that's the name of my new book, An Act of Defiance.
Love
But you know
that.
what? Because I am kind of struck that everybody that I have spoken to in all formats has that moment where they haven't felt seen or respected or heard, and they want that. Like, we just hired a new coach for one of our professional basketball teams, and she was a gymnast. She's literally 4'11". And they said to her, "You can't play basketball." And she quit gymnastics and became a basketball player, like, an act of defiance. And I think collecting these stories just help build our resilience and our confidence, just like you have today. You know what I mean? Eris, you said this over. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And as I read that again, I wonder whether it makes sense to invite you back to spend time with our girls, just to talk about that, so they can be infused with
Absolutely.
time, right? The world I grew up, the world you grow up in is a lot different than the world they're growing up in. And that kind of message is really important to remind them that they are not on the sidelines. They are playing the game, right?
Yes.
And again, our democracy is not perfect, but it's worth perfecting. And lastly, it's not what happens to us necessarily, although that is important, it's how do we respond. And thank you
Yes.
both for lifting our spirits and her horizons today, for reminding us that we do have the agency to respond, right? Can't thank you both enough. I hope we'll be able to do this again. I want to remind everyone to join us back on the 18th of November. We have another extraordinary woman. Her name is Sabine Perez. Courage and Heart can describe what she's turned her breast cancer journey into, her honest reflections, her story of strength and hope. She wrote this recently, and interesting, I sit on a cancer research board, and I shared this with them. She said, "My cancer journey is uniquely mine. There are days filled with grief and fear, and others with hope and optimism. Through it all, I've given myself permission to feel fully, and has become my secret weapon as I navigate the journey." She's a leader for and CEO of the Florida Not-for-Profit Alliance. She's a remarkable, remarkable woman, and I know that spending time with her will also lift our spirits, as I hope we will continue to lift hers. And I think community will mean a great, great deal. So don't miss Refresh on Tuesday, November 18th at noon, Mom. Don't miss it. And a reminder to everyone on your dates, March 27th, Generation W. And as you know now, Tahina and Eris, you are invited as my mother's guests to that event. Okay?
I would love it,
Thanks,
Mom
Mom.
Sherry. I would love it.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.